Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory. Mitch, it's heating up over here. I'm at the beach.
Dude, it sounds great. Like there's like birds chirping behind you. There was a lawnmower that I couldn't even see. That's got quite the setup you're at, man.
Yeah, the sounds are glorious out here, but I don't think it would be any better in the house with the chaos that is taking place.
I can see that. Yes.
All right. So we have a lot to talk about today. I can't even wear the glasses because they just steam up. I am dripping.
So is it like
already.
Really humid there?
Oh, yeah. Super humid.
Is it? Yeah.
Super humid. Yeah. All right. So we do have a lot we want to talk about today, and we're going to get through as many of these situations as we can. And we want to talk about the different tiers of running backs and kind of how we're viewing it, putting a fun spin on it, the whole keep trade cut aspect, but then kind of giving some additional context. And as we typically do, discuss some potential trade opportunities. And Mitch, you weren't happy with the first group I threw at you here.
No, I said some other words, but I'll just say it's a bunch of crap. I don't like it. It's not fair.
It is. And here's why. So the first group, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and Jahmyr Gibbs. All right. So if you're going through, and let's kind of define how we're doing this. Keep, it's the guy you want to keep. Trade, yeah. I would say, and let me know if you disagree, but the guy that you think you could get the most return for out of the two that you're not keeping.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And then cut. I mean, clearly out of Bijan, Breece, and Jahmyr Gibbs, we would absolutely cut one of them. You can't even get anything on the trade
have
market
to.
for
Yeah.
those guys.
I mean, it's the name of the show too.
Man, so those three, Mitch, how are you looking at it?
All right. I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm going to cut Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, I love him. I love all three of them. But if I have to choose one, I think he probably has the lowest dynasty value of all of them. And his upside probably isn't as high as Breece Hall or Bijan's. It's really tough. But then I'm going to keep Breece Hall. And I do think you could actually get a little bit more value out of him by trading him for Bijan. But I think we've seen him perform with such bad quarterback play, with such a bad offense. The guy is just unbelievably good. He came back from that ACL injury and didn't miss a beat at all. He was amazing last year. So I think you could probably end up flipping Bijan for something pretty decent. So he's going to be of course he's going to be my trade here. And the value you could get for Bijan at this moment, and it's really for any of these three guys right now, you could get such good value for him because I call them the three unicorns in Dynasty right now as far as the running backs go. Yes, Christian McCaffrey is going to score more points, but his value isn't near what these guys' will be this year and next year and the year after. So in my view, these are the three guys that I want on my team. I would love having each of them, but if I have to pick, I'm cutting Gibbs, man, and I'm not happy.
I knew that was going to hurt you. I knew deep down inside, but you look at it and from a value perspective, right? Those are the three top guys. Mm-hmm. And I tried to go like Christian McCaffrey, obviously from a production standpoint, it's going to be tough to dethrone him in 2024. But you look at it from a trade perspective, everybody, like nobody would, how do I want to phrase this? I think very few people would choose to keep Christian McCaffrey over Bijan Robinson, over Jahmyr Gibbs, and over Breece Hall, right? Mm-hmm. I think we'd see it from time to time, but rarely. So I wanted to kind of exclude him from the big four. And you look at the guys that in this group, and you touched on it a little bit. Breece Hall, he hasn't had the best of situations, right? And you bring Aaron Rodgers into the mix. You would like to think that offense grows and they at least meet expectations. I feel like the more I talk, the more sounds pop up in the background here.
It sounds great, man. There's really isn't an issue.
We got birds. We got, I don't know, cicada. Is it cicada season? I don't know. Maybe just crickets. And then this fricker in the background. Listen, I know you need to keep the fairway and the greens all up to speed here, but this is important, okay? Holy crap.
Maybe you should call and ask him to stop mowing for the next hour.
I might walk over really quick. All right. I see B Hart's comment. Sounds like these are the water pistols. You know, Dan Lamagna, he's the real guns of the operation here.
That's for sure.
But anyway, and I'm going delirious because I'm dripping sweat out here. But I didn't want to miss a beat. We've had a great flow going each and every week here on Dynasty Theory. So Breece Hall, the situation, you have to look at it. Okay, it's an improved situation. I think a lot of the metrics, whenever you look at Bijan Robinson, I don't want to say you throw him out the window, but that is clearly
you throw him out the window. Yeah,
like that situation has clearly changed. And then you look at Jahmyr Gibbs, and did you see that? You saw the graphic about the ESPN receiving grades?
Yeah, it was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, but go ahead.
But you look at it, and it's like, okay, yards after the catch, missed tackles force, whatever you want to look at. Jahmyr Gibbs was one of the lower guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you look at it, and he's still a top 10 running back on the season. He was a rookie. He was getting the workload and still at the same time getting the workload, but splitting with David Montgomery. So you would have to look at that as Jahmyr Gibbs' floor from a receiving perspective. They didn't go out and add anybody meaningful to the receiving core. Yeah, you would like to think Jameson Williams improves a little bit and things get on track with his career. But ultimately, you talk about these three guys, it's keep. Like, and it goes around your startup strategy that you've kind of been talking about. If you pick 111, 112, and then you have the 201, 202, maybe not being afraid to double tap those running backs, because there is a clear separation when you look at the running back landscape from that tier to the next.
There is, man. I'm still all about that strategy. And when I'm done building those rosters, I really like looking at those teams. I think there's a lot of times to where I could go with a different draft approach and look at it at the end of the startup and be like, yeah, I don't know what I did here. But when I start with Bijan,
hey, really quick, you said you like looking at those teams. I'm picturing like your wife or kids like, hey, Mitch, I need you to do something. Dad, I need you to do something. Hold on, guys. Daddy's looking at this team with 2 stud running backs.
Wait, don't we all do this in Dynasty? It's what we do, right?
We do.
Of course, man. But I mean, in Dynasty Theory fashion, we have spent at least the first, 10% of the show, 15% of the show on the first question?
Yeah, we have, and I don't know if it really warranted it, Mitch, because those are 3 studs, like we talked about.
We're keeping them all, yes.
But giving the additional context, I think, is important. Yes. All right, so let's go down to group 2. We are just going to keep working our way down in terms of value and trying to find 3 guys that are clumped together. And it's going to be interesting from this point on how you view things. So group 2, keep trade cut, Kyren Williams, Jonathon Brooks, and Kenneth Walker.
This one was really, really hard for me. And I have to go off more the dynasty value than my own personal value on this. I am going to cut Kenneth Walker. I think getting good value out of Kenneth Walker is really hard right now with the whole offensive situation that's going on there. We just don't know what's going to happen. The offensive line is okay, but it's not very good. You have Zack Charbonnet, who the new coaching staff might end up liking more than Kenneth Walker. There's just a lot of questions there. And there's questions with all 3 of these guys. But if I'm cutting Kenneth, I'm going to keep Kyren Williams, because I just think if he's healthy, even with Blake Corum there, how they've built that team, they've built it through the interior of the offensive line. Since they've done that, I truly believe they didn't add in any pass catchers to speak of. That's even with Cooper Kupp being what Cooper Kupp was last year. And I think they're going to be a very, very run-heavy team. And with that, I want him on my team because we saw what he did the last, 8-10 weeks of last season to where he absolutely lit the NFL on fire. So I'm huge about that. And I'm trading Jonathon Brooks. I think his dynasty value is high enough to where you could still get that late first kind of startup pick, but he's coming off an injury that we really don't know about. And I'm loving watching what you're doing. Like, I could tell people are in front of you right now and you're kind of just, what's going on? And I would say the background, but it's more like the foreground for you. And I'm absolutely loving it. I think it's hilarious. But just Jonathon Brooks is the trade candidate. We don't know when he's going to be there. He might be there in training camp, maybe not. And then moving forward from there, we don't even know if he's good in the NFL, right? So give me the guys that we've at least seen. I'm going to trade away Jonathon Brooks.
I got this dude with a leaf blower in my ear now.
We literally cannot hear it. Not a single word.
Sound. Oh man, these mics.
I know, it's awesome. Like, we can't hear any of it.
And yes, there are people behind the camera poking their head out. I got a text from my brother-in-law. It says JB supplementing his income with his OnlyFans right now. Psychopaths. Anyway, I actually agree. I think from a trade perspective, Jonathon Brooks is the guy that I would be looking to move. You look at his current dynasty value. Yes, we do think he's going to be a very good back in the NFL. But then you look at Kyren Williams and you look at the production he had. Yes, it was very volume dependent, I think, last year. A lot of peripheral metrics weren't exactly what you would like to see. But I don't know if Blake Corum is coming in to take over that work. To supplement it, sure. To spell him from time to time, to step in whenever necessary if there's an injury. But I still think this is Kyren Williams' backfield. And then with Kenneth Walker, it is a very tough market if you're looking to trade him. And like you said, we don't know what the offense necessarily is going to look like. It's a new regime. How involved is Zack Charbonnet going to be? We see all of the metrics and stats where it's Kenneth Walker. He has the huge play potential, that blazing speed, but he gets stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage almost more than any other back in the NFL. It's feast or famine with him. And I think because of those factors, it is a really challenging time to either trade away Kenneth Walker or, I think it's even difficult to find somebody that's interested in buying Zack Charbonnet just because of the uncertainty in that offense and what it looks like. So I actually agree through two groups here. I would keep Kyren. I would sell Brooks. I would cut Walker, and that's not necessarily an indictment on Walker, but if you're keeping Kyren, who has the more explosive trade market right now? It's certainly Jonathon Brooks. And actionable advice, if you have Jonathon Brooks, I think you could get a decent ad with Kenneth Walker if somebody were looking to move him.
I completely agree. I think you could get, there's going to be someone who wanted him in the rookie draft that wasn't able to, that you're going to be able to go and trade and get something decent for him.
Next group here, and it's an interesting one because we have a young buck, and then we have two a little bit more grizzled veterans, but we're looking at Josh Jacobs, Trey Benson, and Rhamondre Stevenson. Mitch, who are we keeping? Who are we trading? Who are we cutting?
This cut's easy for me. It's Rhamondre. Out of these guys, he's the one that I like the least. He's the one that I have the least rostership of, and I really don't care if he's on my team or off my team, right? I talk a lot about guys. I'll wake up in the morning that I'm like, hey, I want more rostership of this guy. Rhamondre Stevenson just isn't going to be that guy unless this Patriots offense really turns things around here through training camp, through the preseason, going through the first month of the season. And then I am going to keep Trey Benson because I think his upside is so high. I do not believe that Connor is going to stay healthy for the season because he never stays healthy for the season. I have a lot of faith in Kyler in that offense with Marvin Harrison Jr. being there, being probably a little bit more pass happy, but I think they're going to move the ball extremely easily on many teams in the league. And so Trey Benson, I absolutely love his ceiling. I mean, we're talking about ceiling with Kyren. I mean, his Trey Benson ceiling isn't there, but I love what he's going to bring to the field and what that offense is going to do. And I'm trading Josh Jacobs because I guarantee there's someone in your league who values him as much as I do. I still love Josh Jacobs. I know that there's going to be a committee, but I know who's going to be the first one in that committee every single game, right? Josh Jacobs is the 1A and everyone else is the 1C to 1D, right? I mean, there's going to be a huge difference. And there's going to be someone like me that's more than happy going to buy it. And I still am. So please still trade me your Josh Jacobs after this.
His market is very interesting because a lot of people think, well, the decline had already started. He's a 26-year-old running back, or soon to be whatever the age is. And now he goes to a situation where they have tried to utilize 2 running backs. Has it panned out because of the lackluster performance of AJ Dillon? No. But now maybe they are able to incorporate that with Marshawn Lloyd and obviously bringing Josh Jacobs in. James Conner, I think he is going to hinder Trey Benson a lot more than people would like.
You've been still acquiring a lot of Conner this offseason.
I think I picked up a few shares, but number 2 last year in yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles force, he's up there. He still has a decent amount of after Christian McCaffrey and James Cook, he had the 3rd most carries of 10 yards or more. He's still able to get the job done. But that's the thing with James Conner. I don't see him in Arizona after 2024. So it's a short-term situation, at least in my mind. But with Trey Benson, if there is any injury to James Conner this year, any hope of acquiring Trey Benson at a reasonable price is out the window. Because I would say for the most part, it is baked into his value in rookie drafts that I see Ty in the chat. What's going on, Ty? I would say it's baked into his value, and otherwise you're not getting him at that early second value. But here's the thing: if it's a startup, if it's a league where the rookie draft has already taken place, you're not getting Trey Benson at that value. Once he's drafted, the value there's an uptick there, right?
Yeah, Trey Benson's ceiling as far as value is much higher than what we see from Josh Jacobs and Stevenson this year. It is, but you might have to wait that full year because, like you said, James Conner is still a very good running back. It's just if you could believe that he could stay healthy for 13 of the games out of the season. Because I mean, the worst thing is James Conner, helps you get to a 7-3 record, and all of a sudden then he's not there anymore, and you don't have anyone behind him, and you're like, well, that's great. I'm going to get the 108 in the draft now instead of the 104.
If you can work it out from a timing perspective, obviously, we always talk about, these guys have their certain values, but you can't necessarily buy at that value. You can't necessarily cash out at that value. Everything is so dependent on your league dynamic and the league submarket that, we go through and we talk about trades that have taken place in leagues. We talk about these values with these players clumped together, but it always doesn't come to fruition. So if you can time it the right way and you get a manager that is looking to attack at that point in time, you probably could get a plus with Trey Benson during the season at the right moment if moving your Josh Jacobs and Rhamondre Stevenson, if they are performing. There's a lot of ifs there. There's a lot of contingencies there to be able to get that done. But I think a lot of people, they prefer Trey Benson over Stevenson. And I think it's going to be close with the Trey Benson over Josh Jacobs. So I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I do think there might be opportunities to get a pivot that works in your favor if ever looking to acquire Trey Benson, and you can find a frustrated manager at that point in time. All right, we ready for group 4?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we both like Rhamondre. We don't have any issue. We both have high rostership Rhamondre, but I mean that offense can just be so bad this year that he is such a hard sell that he's easily the guy that like his upside could be none if that offense is this bad last year. And they brought in the guy's escaping me, the running back from Washington, Antonio Gibson, right? Antonio Gibson could come in and do a lot of the receiving work that we've seen Rhamondre kind of take over. And if that's the case, then Rhamondre's like the plodding back in that Patriots offense, and that's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, think about the volume that Stevenson got last year, just from dump offs. You know, I think he was a less explosive version of Rachaad White in that sense, right? So the concern is there, and again, I think it's all reflected in the trade market. But moving forward here, and I like that the sun is partially behind a cloud, so it's not beaming in Mitch's face and all of yours. But up next, Derrick Henry, Zamir White, DeAndre Swift. Who are you keeping? Who are you trading? Who are you cutting? If you're watching live, if you're in the comments watching back on YouTube, let us know. Let us know where Mitch is wrong, because there is nothing more in this world I appreciate than whenever we find out Mitch is wrong about something. So please let us know.
You know, the YouTube comments, usually there's at least one that's like, hey, Mitch doesn't know what he's talking about. It happens quite a bit. It's all right. But like the easy cut for me is DeAndre Swift. And I know they came and they gave him a little bit of money, but I have DeAndre Swift. Is he behind me? Yeah, he's right behind me. I have his jersey. I have two of his jerseys, but I'm not convinced he's a better running back than Khalil Herbert. I'm not convinced he's a better running back than Roschon Johnson. I'm just not. And so for me, that's the easiest cut in the world, because I just have zero faith in him. And, I know we put Caleb Williams in the best situation ever, but, we'll see how that actually works out. And these other guys, Zamir White is the problem. I want to trade Zamir White, but no one really wants Zamir White. But if people
want Zamir White if they already have Zamir White.
Exactly.
They find the silver lining in the situation. They're all about the opportunity. But yes, nobody's like we have this value of Zamir White that's out there.
That's exactly it.
Together with Derrick Henry and DeAndre Swift, it's tough to trade away Zamir White if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean, he if possible, he's my trade, but I think I'm probably going to end up having to keep him, because I do know that there's Derrick Henry fans out there. There is the best ball and redraft bros. They are all about Derrick Henry this year because his touchdown upside is literally the highest of any running back in the league. He can have 15 touchdowns this year, and it's not blasphemy to try to be, that's not a hot take to throw that out there. Saying 20, yeah, 20 is too much. Can he get to 15? Yeah, I think it's not that hard for him to get 15.
And that could be with minimal receiving work in that Baltimore offense.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so people are going to buy into that. So I think his trade value is actually going to be ahead of Zamir White. Of course, I would prefer to have Derrick Henry on my team over Zamir White. But if we're actually going to play this with dynasty values and trade markets, build into it, it's going to be, I'm going to have to keep Zamir White because no one else is going to want him. But I do think his upside this year is much higher than DeAndre Swift's. And then I'm trading away Derrick Henry.
I could see, yeah, I understand that. The other, I would probably, man, if we're looking for production, at least in terms of probably the safest floor, and then maybe bake that in with expectation for 2025, I would probably go keep Henry, trade Swift, cut White. But like you said, with the volume, with the production, you're probably going to get somewhat similar production between White and Swift. So if that's the case, I can see wanting to keep Zamir White because of an overall limited market. So I wouldn't fight you too much on that. I'll be interested to see if anybody else will. There is a comment here from B Hart, a bit random, but out of the backup type running backs, how do you see them at the moment? Guys like Herbert, Roschon, Pierce, Jaleel, Estime, Braylon Allen. And then he says, sorry if you covered them at all. My kids are awake now.
So if I'm picking one, Braylon Allen's, so his underdog value is just rising and rising and rising. Braylon Allen just isn't stopping because everyone's like, hey, the second if Breece Hall goes down, Braylon Allen's going to be the guy. Whether he is or not, his value is much higher than these other guys. Then I would I'd probably have to go with the Broncos guys, then the Bears, then Pierce, because we've seen that Pierce is just replaceable. They don't care how good he does. If he's the starter, they're going to replace him. And so he's never really going to have real dynasty value for me. That Jaleel and Estime, I know people are all about them. I still think, dude, it is 6:15 in the morning, so don't hate on me for this. I can't think of Williams. Javonte. I was like, Jameson. It's not Jameson. It just would not click for me. But I think Javonte is the running back one of that offense. They gave him 250 touches last year. I think he's closer to 300 this year. I think he is the guy for them. And I know that's not what, a random beat reporter put out there 2 months ago for whatever reason. And so I'm just not that high on any of these guys. But if I have to choose one to go out and get or hopefully have on a roster right now, it's Braylon Allen.
And I think being right on these situations where there's like a 2A and 2B, that could pay dividends, like the Herbert Roschon situation. I think Khalil Herbert is a better back than people give him credit for. And I know there were some reports and speculation. Does Herbert even make this final roster? And I read that and I'm like, what? And honestly, if he were to get cut, I send him to Dallas. If he would land in Los Angeles with the Chargers, he'd be their best back. And I like Gus Edwards a lot, but how much was he a product of just a great Baltimore situation? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And I think being right on the number 2 spot there in Denver, if for any reason Javonte either underperforms or he gets injured, like we know that Jaleel can be involved in the passing game. So that would be somebody that I would be intrigued by. And then we'll certainly in the Discord get into it a little bit more in terms of the kind of prime backups we might be looking to add, especially, training camp. It's here this week, right?
Is it this week or is it the end of this week?
Again, I'm on vacation, so
you're good. Same. The only thing I know is we are a day and 7 hours away at this point from NCAA 25 coming out, and that's the real news. John, don't you dare! Don't you dare!
I appreciate it. I respect it. The last system I had was PS2. So it's been a while.
I don't even know what you do. I don't understand.
Fantasy football. I'm not kidding. I genuinely have zero other hobbies.
There's a golf course behind you, and I bet you haven't even played that golf course this week.
No, well, we just got to the house yesterday.
Oh,
but okay. No, I didn't bring my clubs. I haven't played, in a few years, honestly. But I always say this, especially like during startups or rookie drafts, it blows my mind when people do things.
Like, how dare you do this right now?
I'm like, what do you mean you're climbing, whatever, some mountain? I'm like, what?
Dude, the best startup ever was when Dan was on the clock for 6 hours and he goes, sorry, I have to run a marathon. And we thought he was joking. No, the dude was literally running a marathon. And I'm like, what are you doing? Dan is the busiest man on the planet whenever he's on the clock. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. And that could be a whole nother episode. But all right. So just to reiterate, Bijan, Breece, Gibbs. What was your keep, trade, cut, just to keep it all? Oh, Lord. I have to go back and remember all these? Okay,
yes.
So I'm cutting Gibbs. I am trading Bijan and I'm keeping Breece.
Okay. And then what was it for Kyren, Brooks, and Walker?
I'm cutting Kenneth, keeping Kyren, trading Brooks.
Okay. And then Jacobs, Benson, Stevenson.
Cutting Stevenson, keeping Benson, trading Jacobs. Yeah.
And then what was it with Derrick Henry, Zamir, White, DeAndre Swift?
We're cutting Swift. Wish we could trade Zamir, but we can't, so we'll keep him. Then we'll trade Derrick Henry.
Okay. I mean, there's so many conversations. I just want to get a consolidated, concise, boom, this is it. All right, moving on here. Keep trade cut. Tyjae Spears, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery.
I'm cutting Tyjae Spears because the upside of that offense, I just don't know. I mean, they could be good. They brought in a lot of good pass catching help. Bill Callahan is there, who is an amazing offensive line coach. So we think that will help. But the quarterback's Will Levis. I know Will Levis had one great game last year and kind of like a great quarter to finish the season, but the rest of his games were god awful. And I realized the team wasn't that good, but I mean, there wasn't anything there to buy into, in my opinion. So I'd love to be a little bit higher on him, but I'm not. So it's easy, cut the running back from that offense, right? And then I'm going to keep Joe Mixon because of the offense. Like, I have no faith that Joe Mixon is like a semi-elite running back or even a solid veteran running back at this point. But what he is, he's a guy that's going to probably give you the upside is you could believe he could give you a touchdown a game. Is he going to happen? No, he'll have, probably 7 or 8 this year, but you can walk into each game thinking, hey, Joe Mixon is going to get a touchdown this week. And then I'm trading David Montgomery because I believe he has the highest dynasty value. And if anything happens to Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, his dynasty value just goes through the roof at that point. And so would I wait to trade him? Yeah. Am I looking to trade David Montgomery? No. But I think if you're going to choose one guy who could have the most, like I said, man, it's like the most trade value of anybody on this list. It's David Montgomery by a lot because Joe Mixon's value is never going up. Tyjae Spears, maybe, but I think Tony Pollard's going to get just as much work as Tyjae Spears does.
So I look at it with Tyjae Spears and David Montgomery, like obviously it's going to be a 1-2 punch. Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard do a lot of things very, the things they do well, they both do it. The things they both struggle with, they both kind of struggle. They're somewhat similar backs, and there is that redundancy there, but that's a situation where if Tony Pollard is even remotely effective, if Tony Pollard is healthy, it's going to be really difficult to get production from Tyjae Spears, at least the production we would hope to get. With David Montgomery, he doesn't need a Jahmyr Gibbs injury to have production. He just doesn't. So there's some weird spider or something on my screen here. Get the frick out of here. Jeez, oh man. Anyway, before I was rudely interrupted, David Montgomery, he's going to give you that production, even if Jahmyr Gibbs is healthy. But like you said, he is in one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL, which is crazy to think about when you talk about your Detroit Lions. Mm-hmm. But he is. So if anything were to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs, I think it's easy to see that David Montgomery has the highest ceiling out of these guys. And then Joe Mixon, like his value, it has kind of everything baked in already. Mm-hmm. He's the number one in that backfield. He's going to get a bulk of the work. He's in another explosive offense. I just don't know that I don't know if the downside and potential downward trend in his efficiency is taken into account that much. But I think all three, you could tell yourself a story. This one, I agree with keeping Montgomery and trying to trade Joe Mixon. But like, it's so tough here as we sit here on July 14th, the trade market on all of these running backs. Like, I'm going out and trying to buy Joe Mixon. I'm going out and trying to buy David Montgomery, several guys in these next couple groups, because this is the time to strike. And if you have people that are now coming back, and they're looking at their team and they're like, okay, I know I'm not a contender, you can probably get a reasonable price for a lot of these guys. So even if we're saying trade or cut, I'm not against going out and exploring opportunities to acquire at this point in time.
Agreed.
I thought there was going to be more there.
Oh, sorry. No, I was looking ahead, making sure I have everything ready for the next one, because I think the next one's extremely easy, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't completely off base by what I said.
The next one is fun because it's two Steelers backs back to back. So we have Jaylen Warren, we have Najee Harris, and we have Alvin Kamara. So Mitch, keep, trade, cut, Warren, Harris, Kamara.
I've said on previous episode, I don't want Alvin Kamara on any team. He's a 28-year-old running back now, and yeah, he could have that pass catching upside, but I don't have a lot of faith in that offense. I don't have any faith in Carr, and Kamara's 28, man. Nothing. I'm completely fine cutting him. I have no issue doing that. Now I'm keeping Najee Harris because, in my opinion, here's how it is in Dynasty. There's people who like Najee Harris like I do, but we just like him, right? He's whatever. He's Brian Robinson. We just kind of like him, right? We like doing it. But there are guys who love Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren and George Pickens are somehow, I don't know how they end up on the same team and how these people view them, but there's people in Dynasty who absolutely love these two players. And I don't think it's the case for Najee at all. I don't think anyone's like pounding the tables like, hey, Najee's the back. Najee probably is the back, right? And he's good. So I'm more than happy to keep him. I think his touchdown upside is very high in this offense with Arthur Smith running it. They're probably going to run it 500 times this year. And both these backs are going to be good. But as far as dynasty value, Jaylen Warren is the one I'm trading, because I guarantee you there is someone in your dynasty leagues that loves Jaylen Warren. Granted, they probably already have Jaylen Warren on their team, right? But if you're the guy with him, I would chop him out to everybody, and I wouldn't trade him for under market. Every trade I would trade him would be over market, because I guarantee there's someone that's willing to do that because they're buying into the whole offense. They're doing that, but they're like, oh, Jaylen Warren is so much better than Najee Harris. He's going to take over the backfield. And I have absolutely zero faith in that actually happening unless Najee Harris is injured for whatever reason.
I mean, with Jaylen Warren, I think it's easy to see why he is so valued, and it's because of the efficiency metrics. And you look at
running backs, man. That's what we do.
I mean, think about like with Tony Pollard, whenever he was getting, minimal work, but Najee Harris, a little over 100 more carries than Jaylen Warren, but Jaylen Warren had more missed tackles forced by one. Yards after contact per attempt. Like Najee Harris was still over 3 yards after contact per attempt. So like that's not horrible. But the same amount of runs of 10 plus yards. So like you look at the efficiency metrics, but how well could Jaylen Warren, if he were given the bulk of the work, hold up? And I'm not trying to project an injury or anything, but just it's a situation we haven't had to see yet with Jaylen Warren. So it certainly would be interesting. I do think Najee Harris is a volume dependent back, but I think he's still going to get that volume.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think that's going to go away. So even if Jaylen Warren does see an uptick, I do think Najee Harris is still going to give you the production. So if we're looking at it from a production standpoint, forget about efficiency, just production here in 2024. I don't know if there is a significant difference, a meaningful difference between Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. So I actually agree with you. I would trade Jaylen Warren, but I know Alvin Kamara, he's getting up there, but he's going to be another one that's just going to get the volume, and we know he's going to get it in the receiving game. And now they have the new offensive coordinator there, and we hope to see the receivers and the backs in motion a little bit more. It would be difficult for me based on short-term production and upside to cut Alvin Kamara here.
So who are you cutting then?
I think it would have to be Najee.
No, not gonna happen. No,
I think it would. Now, if it's like, let's say we add in Kendre Miller, who's in the next group, instead of Alvin Kamara.
Well, yeah,
I would keep Najee. Like, it's just the Alvin. No, but it's just the Alvin Kamara being there. Like, I'm not as down on him as you clearly are.
I am. Yeah, I'm at this. I'm out on him probably for the rest of his career. I'm just not going to have a high rostership of him at all.
All right. So for you, it was keep Najee, cut Kamara, trade Jaylen Warren. All right, let's see if it gets any more interesting here with this next group. We get some production, we get some unknown, some uncertainty, some hope. We have Blake Corum, Brian Robinson, and Kendre Miller. This is an easy one for me. I want to see if it's easy for you.
See, like the cut for me is easy, Kendre Miller. I want my backs who are going into the second year of their, NFL tenure to be good, to have shown something, to have given us any hope at all that they could be more than a replacement level running back. And we didn't see that at all with Kendre last year. So Kendre is the easiest cut for me so far in this whole thing. The keep and trade is hard for me on these next two because I'm not sure which one actually has the highest trade market. I'm going to keep Blake Corum because if anything happens to Kyren, I think Blake Corum goes off. The reason, but my thing is, I think Blake Corum also has more trade value, so I'm okay keeping Brian Robinson. My one worry with Brian Robinson is that Eckler's there. I know Eckler wasn't good last year or anything, but what if he does pick up a lot of that third down receiving work, maybe gets a couple second down, gets like a couple of full series in more so than just the spot duty third down back, right? So that's the only reason why I'm kind of wishy-washy on keeping or trading Brian Robinson. I think I'm going to actually keep it true to what I did previously. I'm going to have to keep Brian Robinson because Blake Corum's going to have a higher trade value. And I know Blake Corum's upside is a lot higher, but I mean, that's probably why he has higher trade value too.
Took you a second, but you got there and you aligned with me. And that's the thing. Blake Corum, like his range of outcomes from a production perspective, it's 50 fantasy points in 2024
or 300
or 350. Like it's not absurd to look at those range of outcomes. So from a ceiling perspective on production, Blake Corum, in my opinion, has the highest ceiling. So if you wanted to play the upside game, honestly, I wouldn't argue with you. I know I did the get out of here hand motion when you said Corum initially, but I wouldn't argue with you. Brian Robinson, I think, has the smallest range of outcomes, and that's based on my expectation for Austin Eckler. We talked about Eckler last week. He hurt me too badly last year.
Yep.
He hurt me. I am still badly wounded. It's fresh, and the cut was deep. All right. I think that knife might still be my back because of what he did to all of my dynasty teams last year as we were acquiring throughout the offseason and early stages of the season. But I would go keep Brian Robinson. I think he's still going to get a solid workload. We have the new situation there. We always talk about hoping and thinking that the Russian quarterbacks, with Jaden Daniels being there, open things up for the running backs. So I would go keep Robinson, cut Miller. And Kendre Miller, he still has like that weird following.
Yeah, dude, it's if we liked him in the pre-draft process, some people can't get off it and they just keep on him. It's like, no, he's fine. How? Why? We saw nothing. And I mean, I know we, poo-hooed beat reporter stuff that happened 2 months ago with other players that we end up liking, right? But no one's coming out and being like, hey, Kendre's doing good in this offseason stuff. A lot of them are like, yeah, Kendre's the same Kendre that we saw last year.
Yeah. So hopefully if you have Kendre Miller, we see some growth here in 2024. All right, next group. Javonte Williams, Zack Charbonnet, Tony Pollard. This is an interesting group because very different situations and profiles.
Yeah, so for me, I'm keeping Javonte Williams without a shadow of a doubt. His upside's the highest. I do know his trade value is higher than these other guys, but these other guys don't have the same ceiling that Javonte does. Now, as far as the trade candidate, I think it has to be Zack Charbonnet because I don't think Tony Pollard has an actual trade market out there. I think, like you said with the running back prior, Zamir White. Yeah, this is his dynasty value. Like if you go on any of the sites on your tiers, yeah, this is his value. Is anyone actually, you know what? I want Tony Pollard as part of this package. I just don't see it happening at all. So he's going to be my cut. So that just means kind of by default, Zack Charbonnet is going to be the trade candidate. But look, you look at Charbonnet on the screen and don't say cabinet. I mean, it's, anyway.
I get it.
Yeah, but trade him. The problem is his value isn't really there. So, I mean, if you're going to trade someone, I think Javonte's the one to trade, but I'm not going to keep these other two backs. I don't want them on my roster, so I'm more than happy moving them off.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what we talked about with Corum, Robinson, Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have one guy that's going to be in a committee in Tony Pollard. One guy a lot of people think is going to be in a committee in Javonte Williams, and then Zack Charbonnet, who we don't know what that's going to look like. Again, it could be 100 fantasy points or 250 for him, depending on what the new situation looks like with the coaching staff and how things go with Kenneth Walker. For me, so how did you end up with this? What did you do?
I did. One sec. Let me get back to the notes. Keeping Javonte, trading Charbonnet, cutting Pollard.
Man, Dan would be very upset because he views Tony Pollard as a top 12 back.
He sure does.
I agree. I think Javonte out of this group might be my closest to an actual buy, just because everybody's trying to dump him for all these reports and speculation. Well, Estime is going to take over a lot of work, and it might come to fruition. It really might. But you're not. It's not costing you a ton to find out.
Nope, not at all.
All right, Group 9 here: Marshawn, Lloyd, Zach Moss, and Aaron Jones.
See, I looked at this one first. I'm like, oh, it's tough, but honestly, it's not tough. I am trading Marshawn Lloyd because his trade value is so much higher than the other guys. Do I want him on my roster? 100%. But there's Marshawn Lloyd stands out there now, and you could definitely get a higher trade value out of him. Cutting Zach Moss. Zach Moss last year was the first year he actually played in 14 games. Before that, it was never above 13 games. That's because he was backing up Jonathan Taylor at the end of the season, so we didn't really need to worry, if he was going to get injured. Aaron Jones, on the other hand, he has this thing that's like, oh, he gets injured. He played 17 games and had a whole bunch of touches just 2 years ago. I mean, the guy, yes, he's getting older, but I think he's actually going to a great spot. That Vikings offensive coaching staff, O'Connell, I think he does a great job. I mean, it's why everyone's buying into J.J. McCarthy, right? J.J. McCarthy, if he went to the Tennessee Titans, would he have even been a first-round pick? I don't think he would have been. But he gets that landing spot because everyone's buying into what that coaching staff does. We saw what they did with Dobbs last season, right? And so I fully believe you should buy into those running backs just as much because they are going to be fine. So Aaron Jones is going to be my keep. Like I said earlier, Zach Moss is my cut, and Marshawn Lloyd is the trade, even though I'd prefer to have him over these other guys.
We look at potential production. Like I see Aaron Jones and Zach Moss both as a short-term solution.
Mm-hmm.
Does Zach Moss separate himself from Chase Brown? Maybe. But I think this year more than any in Cincinnati, that pass to run ratio, it's going to be pretty drastic. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see a lot of target funneling to obviously the big two. And then you look at, if you want to incorporate Jermaine Burton, Mike Gesicki, sure, we're going to get work from the running backs. But I think Aaron Jones still showed us plenty last year. Mm-hmm. He looked the part. So now he's going to go to Minnesota, like you said, and and I think it makes sense for him to still be a buy. So I actually align there with you. I don't disagree. So we have time for one more here. Jaylen Wright, Chase Brown, Jerome Ford.
Like, this is another one to where, like, you could end up buying into each of these players, but I'm cutting Jaylen Wright. I think Mostert and A-Chain are going to be the dudes. And yeah, Wright probably has more value next year. But when you're getting so low in these values, it's hard for me to want to spend this value, because there's going to be someone else that I like at this value next year that's in the exact same position that Jaylen Wright is, that probably has a higher upside going into that 25 season, right?
Wait, did you say you're cutting Jaylen Wright?
Sure am.
Oh, it took 50 minutes for the first one where I'm like, strong disagree.
I'm guessing you didn't listen like the last 2 minutes that I was just talking about the reason why I cut him.
No, because I can't hear over these damn birds.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, I'm cutting him. And it's mainly because I don't believe in Zach Moss. So I think Chase Brown is a better keep than what Zach Moss is as far as dynasty value, right? Yeah, Chase Brown's definitely the backup, but I think his upside's really high. And I have seen Jerome Ford being traded lately. There's a lot of talk coming out that Nick Chubb might not be healthy until October, November this year. And if that's happening, they're really going to the spread offense with the Browns. And I think Jerome Ford kind of fits that perfectly. I think his upside's pretty darn good this year. So even as for me wanting to buy a running back, I'm happy getting Jerome Ford right now, because someone actually, I don't remember who was talking about, was one of the coaches. They were like, we think Nick Chubb's coming back this year. Or it was like, we hope he comes back, right? And when you're hearing that and it's July, you're like, oh, that's not great, man. And I bought a lot of Nick Chubb this offseason.
And he didn't sound overly optimistic.
In interviews. Yeah, that's what it came from. Exactly. And so then it comes out, I'm not cutting Jerome Ford, right? And I'm not cutting Chase Brown because Zach Moss is the guy ahead of him. So that's why it ended up being Jaylen Wright is my cut, because A-Chain and Mostert aren't going anywhere this year. And they're pretty pass happy to begin with as well. Yeah, I'm just cutting Jaylen Wright. Sorry, man.
I was not a big Jaylen Wright guy pre-draft. I wasn't. But based on his price now, I think he's somebody I'm looking to buy.
Cutting? That's the important one here.
I would cut Chase Brown.
Okay.
Because
I could see it.
I don't think there's any long-term upside there. With Jaylen Wright, I do see it. And it could be as early as 2025, where it's an explosive Jaylen Wright, Devon Achane 1-2 punch. Now, if I have to pick who I would trade, just because, I think you'll find somebody excited about that upside longer term that I would want to trade Jaylen Wright. It's tough to trade away Jerome Ford, get the value that you think you should be able to get with so many question marks around Nick Chubb, like you mentioned, Mitch. So by default, I would keep Ford, trade away Jaylen Wright, but that's just because of the situation here, and cut Chase Brown. But strong disagree with cutting Jaylen Wright.
The problem is I could probably cut any of these guys and be completely okay with it, to be honest.
Ultimately, but we wanted to go through. We went through 30 running backs here, got down to running back, dynasty running back 40-ish territory. Wanted to get through as many trios as we could, and not just give the keep, trade, cut aspect, but the rationale behind it. Yep. And again, if you made it to this point, let us know where you agree. Let us know where you disagree. I see a lot of folks dropping trades in that they've been involved in that have involved these players. And I think that's useful to kind of see real world trades that are taking place. And if you enjoy the show, I just ask that you hit like. If you want to get notifications and you enjoy the show and you want to keep seeing future episodes, I ask that you hit subscribe. I won't always have a noisy background. I won't always be drenched in sweat for every episode. So moving forward, you can't bank on that. And the guns don't come out every week. This is a special occasion.
It is.
Final thoughts.
All right, Mitch, for the 253rd time you're waking up bright and early here. It's not even 7 a.m. over there. What do you got for our Dynasty Theory listeners?
Normally I don't go soapbox on this, but I'm going to just for a second, okay? So both my kids are in youth football. We had a parent meeting just about a week ago, and we had the full Kyren. We had short bob haircut.
Wait, I was going to say, was it you?
The people that run these leagues are volunteers. They're not out to what ended up happening. They got very strict about the boundary. So if you aren't in the boundary, you can't play for this certain league, right? You have to go play on the other one, which makes sense because you don't want people cherry picking kids in youth football. This lady was just going off about how they're ruining her kid's future and all this. And he's 11. It's good Lord, people. And the lady in charge of it was like, this isn't my decision. I have nothing to do with it, but I'm here volunteering. I did what I could. And this lady was, all I'm saying is, dude, it's youth sports, people. None of it is that important. 99.9999% of our kids, they're never going to even play high school. Maybe they play a little bit of high school, but that's it. Just calm down. It's really not important. We don't have to live our lives through what our little 11-year-old is doing out on the field. Sorry. That's it. That's all I need to say.
I agree with you, but I can't wait till my kids get to that age where they're taking part in, a little bit more competitive sports.
Yeah.
And I just pray that I'm not that guy.
It's pray. The hope, man. It's the hope.
Oh my goodness. All right. Like I said, if you enjoy the show, please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe each and every Sunday morning, at least until the season gets here. Yes. We will be live on the Dynasty Theory YouTube channel. Hits the podcast feed later in the week. And then we've been doing additional episodes on a weekly basis for our patrons every Sunday morning. And then it goes on YouTube. I think Wednesdays we've been doing that episode. Mm-hmm. Not this week, unfortunately, but we'll be back to it next week. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. Have a